All right. So, hi, everybody. Thanks for spending some time with us today. We're here with Kevin Vigil, guitar instructor extraordinaire, and actually Dr. V of the Heritage High School system, and a slew of other bona fides. And I'd like to ask him to talk a little bit about his past and what these bona fides are, just to set you up for why this is going to be worth your time.
Okay, you have a question?
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about your music and background.
My background. Okay. So, well, where do I start? I started music when I was a child. My mom plays piano and organ, and then, but also when I was a child, she bought a guitar just so she could strum and play while we were, us kids would sing along, so like, my goal in life at that time was Puff the Magic Dragon. Maybe I could play that sometime, right? But I was just a little kid. And I did start taking some guitar lessons, in grade school. I think I was playing Stairway to Heaven when I was 8 years old or something like that,
By ear, right?
Well, I had a teacher, but it was pretty much like, here's some chord charts and then put these. So I didn't really know what I was doing.
By ear, yes.
Yeah. So kind of rote learning, really. Yeah. But then, I was primarily piano and organ, when I was piano and organ, and then saxophone when I was in junior high.
Huh.
But I was still playing guitar. Guitar was just like a toy for me. It was just fun to do. And then I started playing rock in rock bands when I was in high school, and that was a lot of fun. And but I was still playing piano and organ and saxophone in the high school band and that sort of thing. There was no guitar program, when I was in high school. But when I was 18, I heard a classical guitar for the first time, and I just fell in love with it. I just like, holy cow, you can play Bach on the guitar. I mean, this stuff that I do on the piano, it's like you can't carry your piano with you. I mean, I'm sorry, I tried.
I heard John Williams' Virtuoso Variations, that Brown album with the chaconne and all those other things.
Oh, yeah.
That's all it took.
Yeah. So, I mean, just, that's really what drew me to more classical playing. But I was also a rock player, and I was studying some jazz guitar too when I was in high school, like my junior year, I guess, and senior year. Then decided to do a degree in guitar performance. So I did my undergrad at University of Memphis. My master's was at Yale, and then my doctorate was at Shenandoah University.
What did you study with at Yale?
Ben Verdery.
Oh, Ben Verdery was at Yale. Elliot Spitzer's not there still? He was there forever.
Oh, well, Elliot was before Ben, for sure. Elliot started the program, and Ben had been there just for a few years before I got there. So
Ben Verdery sat in on a master class with Bear Waco. I attended in Middletown at that University Wesleyan, and he blew everybody away. He was stunning. He was just a kid out of New York at the time, playing with that flute player of his, and he was just ridiculous. He was a monster.
Oh yeah. Ben is just he's amazing.
Yeah,
has been since I've known him, and he still is, and he's just such an inspiration just to this day. Just amazing.
All right, so let's get down to brass tacks here. A little bit about Heritage High School, a little about your program. Did you start it? And in other words, I as I've told you before in these other videos, I started my program back in '74, but I've worked with now in these video series 3 or 4 people, and not all of them started the program. Some of them inherited it. So talk to me about your guitar program, the classes you teach, and essentially the number of students, just like a broad brush. Then we'll get down to the details.
Okay. Well, I did not start the program. So I'm teaching in Loudoun County, Virginia. Next to us is Fairfax County. And I actually started in Fairfax just part-time, but I didn't start that program either. That was already a program in place. And I was testing the waters for teaching in public education, because I had been performing and teaching privately more than anything. And then when my daughter was born, then I decided, if I keep doing what I'm doing, my schedule, I'll never see her once she starts school. So I needed a day job, basically. And so I tested the waters in public education in Fairfax, and then and went full-time in Loudoun County. So I'm teaching in Loudoun County, but there had been a few teachers in that guitar program. The school had only been open like 2 years when I came into it. There was already guitar classes there. And there were only, I think there's maybe just one level, maybe two levels at that time. And it was taught by the choir teacher and the band teacher, I think the first year. The second year, it was the choir teacher. And then they brought in another teacher who actually was a guitarist, and she taught the higher level students, right? And then I come in, and that teacher goes to another school, and the choir teacher is like, "Yeah, I don't have to teach guitar anymore." And so I had a full program at that point. And so when I started the program, well, I didn't start when I started teaching in that program. I think we started actually maybe about 50 or 60 kids taking guitar. And then over the following several years, just within a few years, we were at 160 guitars. Yeah.
All of those years, or did you bring in?
Well, no, they had to bring in another guitar teacher. So, and then the size of the classes, I mean, at that time, probably somewhere like my room's only so big, so you can only put maybe 20 people in that room. And that's kind of crowded. And then if there was space, then we'd use the choir room, you know, because then there was a class that I did one time, there was like over 30 kids in there. So those were pretty big. Now, a lot has happened since then. More schools have built, and every time they open a school, then the population of our school drops, and that's so our they're just, you know, they kept building. So we have all these high schools now, and I think we're at 16 or 17 high schools now. And so every time they build one, the numbers drop at any of the feeder programs. But so now, then we had COVID, and that also had an impact on things. And then coming back, so the guitar numbers are down. We're actually higher than band or choir and orchestra, believe it or not. Usually guitars are not, but you know, we had a really bizarre registration this past year. So we are sitting just over 50, maybe 55 guitar students this year. Average class, you know, is about, you know, I think my biggest class is 17, but I also have a class that's like 7. And then I also teach 2 other classes. I teach DE music appreciation. Basically, it's a class where the kids get college credit for. It's dual enrollment. And then I also teach AP music theory. So I teach those 2 plus my guitar classes.
Cool. All right. So yeah, so before we get to the challenges, does the school provide the instruments? I think it doesn't. I think I saw on your website that they have to have a guitar. Was cyber stalking your program?
We do provide instruments. Okay. So we have a class set of guitars. So the kids don't have to bring them back and forth. The kids do need to have a guitar at home to practice with, right? Now, if they don't have the means to have a guitar at home to practice, then I'll provide them one. You know, basically.
Is it all classical nylon string, or is there steel strings? You know, acoustics?
Well, primarily nylon string guitars. You know, there have been times when I've had to, you know, dip into some steel strings, you know, because sometimes people donate instruments. Sometimes I have some in my storage. So if I run out of the classicals, then I'll start giving steel strings. It's better to have something than nothing, right? Right now, I've been fortunate enough to be able to give classical guitars to these kids.
Cool.
So,
what about the levels? I mean, I assume, I mean, I've been reading a lot of Bill's stuff, and there's this level 1, year 1, and level 2, year 2, and they more or less overlap or mesh, but not necessarily. And he's saying that a lot of different interpretations of what leveling is all about is throughout the country. So do you have different levels, and do they audition to get into the higher levels, or how does that work?
So in Loudoun County, where I teach, we have 4 levels. We have beginning, intermediate, advanced, and artist. And these are defined really by our standards, our state standards. They have those 4 levels. Now, it used to be
state classical guitar standards or state guitar standards?
State music standards.
Oh, music standards. Okay.
Now, within those state music standards, guitar exists, and that was a fight on its own. But so I mean, you know, 2020 is when they revised the standards. I was fortunate enough to have been on
Yeah.
on the standards committee.
Yeah.
So I had some input in it. But before that, we had, there was only one level in middle school and two levels in high school in the standards. But what we did in Loudoun County, where I teach, is I said, well, look, there are 4 levels under instrumental music. Guitar is an instrument. Let's give it 4 levels. And so administration agreed with me. And so we were able to create 4 levels in our guitar programs for the last many, many years. Now, with the revised standards that we had in 2020, we do have those 4 levels in high school. We have 3 levels in the middle school. Well, actually, 3 levels in the middle school. So they have beginning, intermediate, and advanced in middle school, and beginning, intermediate, advanced, and artist in the high school. So we do have those 4 levels. Now, how do you distinguish them? And Bill's Bill's point is taken, because even if you look at the NAFME standards, years 1, 2, 3, and 4, there are things in year 2 that I might do my first year, but there are things that in year 1 I might do in the second year. So, I mean, those, I'm on the NAFME Guitar Council, and we did, lots of discussion, and there's a lot of, back and forth about what should be in what. At the end of the day, I think what we came up with was great. And that's something that Bill actually initiated. He started that whole process. And it continued on, and it finally got published. So I do think it's a really great way to start. So anybody that's teaching guitar, I would definitely go to the NAFME website.
The best practices, right? I think
the best practices.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful, wonderful document, because it does give you some guidance in terms of what you should be doing. What is your sequence, and how far do you go each year? So I think that is actually a really great document, and Bill should be proud for initiating it, and I'm really happy to have been part of that as well.
Wonder if it had been even better. I'm gonna turn this sideways a bit, to include the examples. It talks about in general terms about power chords and bar chords, and and reading notes, and it would have been pretty cool to show, like, gotta be able to do the Hendrix chord and switch back to A and that kind of thing, or scales at 80. Or whatever, it would be very interesting to get to another level as a way of providing precision, so that we can have a really accurate target.
Well, one thing that with those standards, first of all, just having the bullet point, I think, is a powerful tool. But to your point, the council, our guitar council with NAFME, we are actually creating videos of each bullet point.
Oh, good.
And they have not been released. I think a few of us have completed a few of our videos, but there's a lot of them to do. And so the videos, when they do get published with NAFME, are very, very specific. They'll be very organized, so that you could go to the website and say, okay, here is this bullet point from year 1, or here's this bullet point from year 2, or whatever, and you can go straight to that thing. Some of the videos will be very short, some of them will be very long. Some need more explanation, some need less. And the approach that we're taking with it is that, these teachers that are teaching guitar that are not themselves guitarists, right? They need something that's different. If you're talking about dynamics, it's not just about getting louder and softer, right? You have to be really specific, because, how do you get louder and softer, and how do you get the illusion of loudness and softness on an instrument, right? And so, if I talk about dynamics, I might talk about, a lot of different things, but, one would be just technique. How do you pluck the string, and displacing the string, and how much you displace the string. You actually see that in a camera, watching that string displacement, whatever, what the release is like. But then there are other things too in terms of dynamics. What carries, well, maybe it's the timbre of the sound. So if you're playing closer to the bridge, it's brighter,
right?
And it might cut through one way, just like an oboe would cut through an orchestra. Or maybe you go over the sound hole or over the fingerboard, and maybe that's more like a clarinet that doesn't cut through as much, right? So you can play around with timbre as well as the displacement of the string. Then, of course, there's different techniques for that you can use, whether if it's going to be free stroke or rest stroke or something like that. So I'm really excited about these videos for when they do come out, because I think that it is going to be a wonderful supplement to those best practices.
Yeah, good. All right, no pick, just all fingers.
I use pick as well.
Okay.
I think it's
Yeah.
important in music education. If you think about styles of music,
Well, in guitar education too.
well, yeah, guitars within that. So if I'm looking at music education as a whole, right? And if I look at the band, well, the band might play, some Beethoven, right? But the band might also play some Michael Jackson.
Yeah, that's true.
Choir, maybe they'll do madrigals, but they're also doing show choir or other pop tunes, right? So I think if we think in that broader sense, I think that I don't call my program a classical guitar program. A lot of people, there are people that do talk about being a classical guitar program.
Yeah.
For me, it's all about literacy, and I think Alan Hirsch, talked about that in his video and in his interview with you.
He is very holistic about it.
Yeah, and I think that literacy is the real key. So literacy and technique, I think, are crucial.
Literacy. Give me your definition.
Being able to read and write.
Okay.
So yeah, it's the notation and being able to interpret the notation, and then even to compose. So I think that all of that is really important. To be a real well-rounded musician. So I'm not sure what the original question was, but
it was just basically that. What do you do? And speaking towards that, styles. I mean, do you have almost all ensemble stuff? Is there solo classical? Is it the Aaron Scher method? I mean, what are you using for material, and what styles do you give to your classes to work with or work from?
Right. Well, I think it's important that everybody is versatile. I think that's crucial, and especially for those people who might be moving toward a degree in music or something like that, or a career in music. Not that, I mean, the majority will not, but I do think that being versatile is extremely important. It helps your musician all the way around, and so in terms of style, yes, we do solo, we do small ensembles, we do large ensembles, we do some things that maybe we'll have some electric guitars involved. Just all kinds of arrangements that are out there, right? It's like Alan Hirsch has done some amazing arrangements of pop tunes, which is a lot of fun. But yes, I think solo is mostly what I do with my beginners and intermediate, because that's where I really focus on technique. And when they have that technique and they start playing in an ensemble, it sounds even better, right? So I do some ensemble music with the beginners and intermediates as well, but I do a lot of solo work with them. So
you're talking classical music solo. You're not talking about Misty.
Right. Well, it'll be in notation, whether if it's classical or not doesn't really matter, but we'll be using right hand technique, or maybe we're using a pick. But there's technique with a pick too, and there's other. So whatever it is based. It's got a literacy ground, and it has a technical ground to it. And then of course we do also play ensemble music. So we hit a lot of different styles, and even improv. I think it's really important. I mean,
I've been seeing this improv. I don't mean to ask. I don't mean to jump in again, but what pentatonic scales? With passing tones, or just all modes, or what kind of improv? I'm just curious. Really curious. You're really curious, actually, about that.
Well, this is something I had a lot of fun with during the pandemic when we were just online. Is I would make these backing tracks, and it's just 2-5-1.
Yep.
Right. So just like a Jamie Aebersold type deal, it's like doing 2-5-1 progressions, and then the kids would play major scales on top of it, and then I'd have them improvise. They could do little groups of thirds, do da do da do da do da or whatever, and then eventually start creating their own little lines using scales and arpeggios and things like that. And so that was a thing. It's like every 2 weeks we were in a different key. And so that's one of the things I did through the entire shutdown. Was
kids like that a lot.
Oh man, it was amazing. That some people really had a hard time teaching during the pandemic. I thought in some ways there were some things we got to do that weren't able to do, and some of the kids loved it because, especially when it comes to improv, it used to be in a classroom, you couldn't get people to like step
Right.
up, like maybe one or two.
Right.
But online, when it's pre-recorded, they had to record something and submit it. It's like they found themselves really enjoying it.
Yeah.
And there was some really incredible ideas that just came out of these kids. It was fantastic. And I don't know if we'd have gotten that any other way, but it was kind of neat. But so I really spent some time on improv and scales, and we went through up to what, 4 sharps and 2 flats, both major and minor keys. And so that was a lot of fun, and just improvising with all of that.
So I'm just back to this, but so no pentatonics, no blues scales, that kind of
Oh
thing.
yeah, that too. Yeah. So there's
Okay.
also, I do a blues unit. There's a wonderful if you were to go to, I think it's pbs.org, that has a blues unit there, the blues classroom, I think they call it. And so there's a whole thing on how to write a blues, what the 12-bar blues is and how the lyrics even work. And then certainly you can use your pentatonic scales or blues scales when you're improvising and that sort of thing.
We're going to go sideways again. Do you ever work with other disciplines and teachers in your school? Do you take your guitar students and have them back up the choir? Do you work with, say, the art teachers and show like Bach and art from the Baroque era? Or does it get into history and social and all that kind of stuff? Because that was a big thing it was after I left teaching, but it was a huge thing for a while. Interdisciplinary pods in classrooms and stuff.
I try to bring in interdisciplinary ideas. Sometimes it doesn't work with schedules. Every year is a little different in terms of this teacher's schedule and that teacher's schedule and that sort of thing. However, like last year, I did have a group of guitarists playing and accompanying choir. That was the first example. We did do that. There have been years where I've had a guitar ensemble play in the pit for a play.
But like a Shakespeare, you play like
exactly. We did all kind of stuff. Yeah. So we've done that. So yeah, I mean, anytime we have that opportunity, I think it's a great thing all the way around for everybody. This is a great community builder.
Yeah.
And other things, there was a time that we did a thing. I've had vocal soloists come in and
nice
along, with the group. So I think, anytime we can pull that off is fantastic. Other interdisciplinary things that I like to do, believe it or not, I work with the physics teacher sometimes. A few presentations with physics and sound and how that works. And so just have a bunch of instruments that I steal from the band room and we talk about different instruments and how they function and what do you expect to hear and that sort of thing, and are they portaphones, are they membranophones, and all that fun stuff, right? I've also done work with our psych teacher. I had well, you'll see it here, but I have this big scar on the back of my head. But I had brain surgery in 2007. So brain is something I'm really, really passionate about in terms of understanding what happened to me and how I recovered.
So you play different chords and talk to psych people about sounds and emotions and stuff?
Well, no. So the brain thing is a whole different thing. Basically, how do you how does music in the brain work? So I work with them on that. So like AP Psych classes, I can actually, I've done brain presentations before for different places, but but to me, I think it's kind of cool to make that connection between music and the brain. And then of course the other types of things would be like going into a Spanish class and playing for them, or having my kids play Spanish music in their projects. I had a student once did a science fair project on a vibrating string, and didn't win the prize with it. Got past the first round, which was awesome. But I just anything that you can do as a community, just having the guitar out in front. Or music in front, not just guitar, but just getting the community involved with something like that, across the disciplines in the building, or just, I think that's always a great thing. And even in sports, this year I'm going to have kids playing electric guitar, doing the national anthem, playing
Yeah, that's
for all the indoor events, like the football, they get the band, but the band doesn't play for the volleyball game or the basketball game, right? So why not give them some attention, and
that's a
also
really good idea.
yeah, just put things together. So I think, so the cross-disciplinary thing is, I think, really, really important.
You want to freak the computer science people out. Talk to them about the definition of relative addressing and absolute addressing. Talk to them about sequence, iteration, and branching, and you'll find that it's exactly what music is. There is no difference between relative pitch and absolute pitch. There's no difference between the way music works sequentially, with branches, which are go-tos, and with iterations, which are repeats. It's the same language. I'm positive that the people who wrote the first computer programming languages were musicians. There's no doubt. So you can go there and have some fun with that. All right. So we need to get moving. So do you have a method? And how do you obtain this repertoire? Do you buy it? Do you have a budget? Do you go to IMSLP? I mean, how do you get all this stuff?
Well, for my beginning class, I use a book that I co-wrote with John Graham. The book's no longer in print. It was called Guitar 101. It was published by Clear Note Publications. I'm working on another book to replace that, but I still use the book because I still have it. But it's a book about this thick. It's over 400 pages. And the concept, most of the method books you'll see out there are about this thick, right? And they all pretty much have the same approach. It's here's the first string, E, F, and G, and you get maybe 4 little things to work on, and then you get B, C, and D, and again the same thing. And to me, that should be done. That much material you can get through like in a month, maybe 2 at the most. It seems to me it should go really quick. The idea of the book that we wrote was really, really thick, and it would to get through the entire year, basically, the idea. And it teaches 1st through 5th position all in 1 year's time, and as well as chord playing and everything else, and accompanying and all that stuff. So that's the book that I use. That being said, it's not it's not available anymore, so I couldn't really recommend it. But that's what I do personally. There are a lot of books that are out there. Alan talked about the shear method. I actually have a set of all 3 of those books. And I use those more for my intermediate to advanced students, to work on, furthering technique. So I think those are wonderful books. And then there's, some other series that are out there. Like there's Class Guitar Resources has the Hot series, and that's kind of a neat series in terms of it starts on the 6th string, not the 1st string. And that's the way I teach. I teach 6th string to the 1st string. I just think it's easier to say E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G than it is to go E, F, G, B, C, D, G.
Right. Yeah.
It does. To me, it's not in a sequence that makes sense. And when you start with the lower strings, you can get the kids, first of all, you get past any phobias about ledger lines because you're dealing with it from the very beginning. The second thing is that you can throw in power chords right away, and the kids can have fun with that. So I think there's some advantages from starting on the 6th string, but there have been a few books out there that started on the 6th string. In fact, I have a copy at school. It's a really old, I don't know what year it was published, but it was a Mel Bay, started on the 6th string before he switched it the other way. So I thought that was fascinating. But anyway, but there are a lot of methods out there that are fantastic. But I still use the one that I wrote.
I was running a software teaching firm, and one time I got complaints from one of our clients that every different teacher came in and did the manual in a different order. Chapter 1, chapter 4, chapter 5, chapter 3, chapter 7. Oh no, I do this. so we had dinner at a Roy Rogers up in Hartford, and I found that each teacher, yes, did it differently. And when I floated the idea of us all, doing a unison student body left, it was like, nah. And then I realized that the teachers got effective educational delivery by basically doing whatever they did their best way. And since their best way, their individual professional way was just as important as the material, I said, okay, keep doing it. I'll handle the client's complaints.
Right.
Because it was silly. It seems silly.
Well, I mean, yeah, and even, I teach AP music theory, and while there's a text that we use for this, I don't necessarily go in that order because it doesn't necessarily work for every group of students. And I hate to say it, but because it's AP, you're actually teaching to the test, and so you have to make sure that you're getting certain things in there before they go to that test.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes I'll skip a few chapters here and there. But back to another question you asked about the budget and that sort of thing. So, in our school system, yes, we do get. We get an allotment, right, for educational supplies. I think I get about $1,400 a year for my program. That doesn't take care of everything. We do have a boosters organization as well. And fortunately, our boosters is a music boosters. It's not a band boosters and a choir boosters and a guitar boosters. It's all inclusive. And that's really kind of a healthy situation, I think. So we all get out there and do tag day and get our money in. And then after that, the three music teachers there, we talk about, okay, what are our needs and what are our wants? And we divvy up the money as we think is appropriate, and it seems to work out pretty well with us. So thank goodness for the boosters, because it really helps a lot. A lot of the instruments I have a lot of nicer guitars than the one I got from the county. Some nice solid top guitars, and also I have a contrabass. I've got 2 quintos, 2 sopranos. So ways of expanding the sound and the range of the instruments. But couldn't get that without the help of the boosters.
Yeah, so contrabass is 3 times your $1,400.
But it's strings. You're talking about a lot of guitars that need a lot of strings, and that gets expensive fast too. So, and I try to change them, 3 or 4 times a year if I can, and that's a lot of money.
Yep. So we kind of got to end this, unfortunately, because we could talk for a lot longer. But let's get into like what you would tell a first-year teacher. So one of the questions out here was your initial challenges, how you overcame them, and when you were starting. And then what would you tell a first or second-year teacher, if you had, like an elevator ride message or something like that? What would you tell them? So challenges, and then how you overcame them, and then what would your parting advice be to someone starting off?
Okay, so when I first started, the big challenge was acronyms, and that is still the challenge. They change all the time, so acronyms drive me nuts. But other than that, I don't know. I learned very quickly, I guess, my first year, that the more engaged the students were, the less problems you had.
Yep.
I'm not I wouldn't call myself a strict disciplinarian. It's more about getting their attention. If you can pull the kids in with you, then you've got them. They're in the palm of your hand. You don't have to worry about anything. They don't only want to go to the bathroom because they want to be in your classroom, right?
Yep.
So I think it really comes down to that level of engagement with the student that and I've had that for the most part. Not to say there hasn't been an occasional, like every once in a while, you'll get a kid that will give you a lot of trouble, right? And you just have to, to quote Barney Fife, you got to nip it in the bud. And you got to do that right away using the means that your administration will allow, and that has evolved over time. What I was able to do 10 years ago might be different from what I can do now. But you do have to use the mechanisms in place for that. And also just to respect the fact that a kid that's acting out, you might, you really have to think about why, You
Yeah.
don't necessarily know that it's about you or your class. It's probably about something else, right? You don't know what's going on at home. You don't know what the story is. And so you have to, keep that in mind. It's not personal. This is the kid where they're at right now.
Mhm.
And, you might have to mitigate that situation in the moment. But you do have to do something, because if you don't do something and the rest of the class sees that, then you've lost control of the class.
Yeah.
You've got to keep the class with you the whole time. And when that happens, you deal with it in that moment. Try to nip it in the bud, whether if it means administrative help or whatever, but you have to take care of it right away. And then you'll keep the respect of your students, and then you stay engaged. Advice to other teachers, other than something like that.
For guitar specifically.
Yeah, right. So I think, when you think about a lot of the people that are teaching guitar are not themselves guitarists. And so a lot of music teachers would think, well, what's the difference? It's music. But I think the challenge for the non-guitarist guitar educator is the fact that, if you're teaching a band instrument, most of those are monophonic.
And they learned it in college, probably, if they're a music educator. They have,
right. Yeah. They'll have their primary instrument, but even a band director, there might be a guy that's like a French horn player, but he's teaching clarinet. They're clarinet players in the thing. So yeah, I mean, even with that, but I think the biggest thing is the difference between a monophonic instrument like a band instrument or choir, a singer. And then even in orchestra, you're playing violin or whatever, while you might have double stops, maybe
it's monophonic.
It's primarily monophonic. And I think that guitar, because it's polyphonic, that brings in a whole wave of other things that you have to really try to get your hands around, literally, but playing more than one note at the same time in your right hand, or fingering things in the left hand, for multiple voices. But we deal with monophony on the guitar, but we're also playing polyphonic, we're playing homophonic textures. So I think it's really that whole texture thing. And then understanding the fingerboard, that's another thing. A lot of people, they just learn those first 3 frets, right? And then everything after that, it's lions and tigers and bears, oh my. But, there's actually logic to the fingerboard. And I think that if you can, if you find yourself teaching maybe that second year of guitar where you need to know more of that fingerboard, really work on understanding the fingerboard logic. And when you can understand those patterns, then you'll find, oh, it's really not so crazy. It's not scary anymore. And, nobody, when you go to a piano keyboard, you learn that first octave, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Guitar is a little different. We do have patterns. They're not quite as simple as that, but
guitar is a 2-dimensional table. Piano is a 1-dimensional table.
Yeah.
Big difference in terms of understanding it.
So I do think that's something that any teacher that is not themselves guitarists, it would benefit to put some time into understanding the logic of the fingerboard. I think that's very, very important. Other than that, I think it's important to keep things challenging, meaning that, I'll give you a little anecdote. There was a teacher, a friend of mine, and he did a little poll of his students. I saw this on Facebook, and it was the end of a year. He was teaching middle school, and he asked the students 2 questions. He said, how many of you do you plan to take guitar next year? And then the second question was, why or why not? And of course, this is like a Google form or something, they did with his kids. And he said that the answer to the second question pretty much was summed up to, because it was hard. The first question, 97% of the kids were taking guitar the next year because it was hard. It was challenging. And I think that's
really terrific vignette.
Yeah. Because you gotta challenge kids. Don't over challenge. But you keep them in that proximal zone of learning all the time. If it's too easy, they get bored. And these are guitar kids. They've got these guitars. They just want to noodle. They want to play around. It's like they want to do something with it. And they'll get bored. So I think you've got to keep the momentum forward. You've got to keep them engaged with the challenge. And so I think that would be no matter whether if you're teaching middle school or high school or anything, to keep their interest, it's got to be somewhat challenging. Doesn't have to be crazy hard, but it's got to keep them, looking at that carrot, trying to get to it.
That's terrific. Kevin, Dr. V, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a terrific session, and I wish you all the best in the future and good luck. Take care.
Thank you.